Elite Facts presents
10 banned episodes of television shows.
10.
The Simpsons, the City of New York versus Homer Simpson. Okay, so this episode was temporarily banned, meaning the episode did see the light of day before being taken off of syndicated broadcast 4 years after its original air date in September of 1997, before then finally being put back on in syndication. The simple reason for this episode's ban was because it used the World Trade Center as a main plot point in which Homer Simpson travels to pick up his car, only to find it parked between the two towers and covered in parking tickets. Obviously, the 9/11 attacks happened 4 years later, causing any imagery of the World Trade Center to become either offensive or inappropriate. As we've said, however, the episode, as of now, has made its way back into syndicated broadcast schedules.
9.
Married with Children, I'll see you in court. Fun fact about this episode of Married with Children: the episode aired for the first time in the United States a full 13 years after it was originally taped. The premise for this episode revolves around Peggy and Al Bundy finding a sex tape of Steve and Marcy Rhodes at a nearby motel. Knowing this information, the Bundys decide to have relations at the same motel anyway, knowing they could be taped. The reason for doing this is simple. With both couples knowing that they've been taped, they decide to sue the motel for recording them without their knowledge. The Rhodes are awarded $10,000, but the jury finds there's not enough proof that the Bundys actually had sex. When they find themselves alone in the courtroom, the Bundys proceed to have sex in the courthouse, without realizing that they are again caught on film. As you can probably tell, this episode was banned due to it having way too much sex in it. Fox's censors pulled I'll See You in Court before it could ever air, though the episode did air everywhere else in the world. In 2002, FX ran it for the first time in the United States. However, the episode aired with 4 raunchy lines being cut that censors deemed still too much to air.
8.
Family Guy, Partial Terms of Endearment. So Family Guy is pretty much a shell of its former self, completely ditching funny storylines for episodes that include 70% cutaway gags and 20% shock value gags. It's really taken a nosedive in the last 10 years. With all the cringe-worthy episodes that are released, it makes you wonder, how have only 2 episodes been banned from television? The first episode banned was Wish Upon a Weinstein, due to it not only getting slapped with a copyright notice from Disney for doing a parody of the song Wish Upon a Star, but for also taking stereotypical jabs at Jewish people. The episode itself wasn't that bad, if we're being honest. The episode Partial Terms of Endearment, however, treads on a really controversial subject. The episode revolves around Lois volunteering as a surrogate mother in order to help a couple who are unable to have a child. The couple eventually dies early in the episode, leaving Lois with a difficult choice to make: keep the child or abort it. Now, if that's not a controversial subject, we honestly don't know what is.
7.
Peppa Pig, Mr. Skinny Legs. Oh boy, this is a pretty weird one. So you're probably asking, well, how did we get from Married with Children to Peppa Pig? We honestly don't know ourselves, but the reason for this episode getting banned is pretty understandable. This episode hasn't been entirely banned, as it's still viewable in countries like the UK and the US. However, Australia banned this episode because, well, Australia is a scary place. The last thing you want to do over there is teach your kid that it's okay to be around spiders or to keep spiders as pets, considering most spiders in the land down under are capable of killing you.
6.
Seinfeld, the Puerto Rican Day. So this episode was banned for the simple reason that it went out of its way to disrespect an entire country. In this 1998 Seinfeld episode, an early escape from a New York Mets game leaves the troupe trapped in traffic among the celebrants of the annual Puerto Rican Day parade. After accidentally lighting a Puerto Rican flag on fire with a sparkler, Kramer stomps on the blazing flag before being attacked by a mob of Puerto Ricans, who eventually throw Jerry's empty car down a stairwell. Needless to say, the National Puerto Rican Coalition didn't like the episode. In fact, they despised the episode. The main reason was that they thought the flag-burning segment of the show, and even just using the flag as a prop, was just inappropriate. Bronx Borough President Fernando Ferrer, who is Puerto Rican, objected both to the vandalizing of a car and Kramer's comment that it happens every day in Puerto Rico. NBC apologized for the episode, and though it was only trumped in ratings by the series finale, the Puerto Rican Day wasn't included in initial syndication packages across America. But by 2002, the episode had begun to appear in syndication on some networks.
5,
Gargoyles, Deadly Force. So, for anyone who doesn't know what Gargoyles is, this show was essentially Disney's answer to Warner Brothers' very popular Batman the Animated Series. Both shows had a very gothic feel in terms of art style and aesthetic, and both shows included dark and sometimes compelling storylines that both kids and adults could enjoy. Needless to say, both shows were pretty badass. Hell, so much so that a lot of people still watch these shows today simply for the nostalgia. While Gargoyles has a dark tone, they did somewhat take it to a whole other level with one episode that focuses a lot on firearms. While pretending to use a gun in the episode Deadly Force, the character Broadway accidentally shoots Elisa and attempts to cover up his crime. When you consider it, that is a pretty heavy subject to show children, as it not only showcases murder, but it also shows the character Broadway attempting to hide his crime, making it much worse than the incident already was. Although this episode was initially pulled from the rerun cycle thanks to objections by advisory groups, it was eventually re-aired after editors removed some of the blood from Elisa's shooting. It has since been added to the DVD collection.
4,
Tiny Toons Adventure, One Beer. Just by the title alone, you can probably tell why this episode has been banned. Warner Brothers is no stranger to including controversial subjects in their animated work. Just look at Bugs Bunny's early serials and you'll see what we mean. That being said, however, this episode of Tiny Toons Adventures was released in the 1990s, just around the time when censorship was starting to take its toll on the film and television industries. So, naturally, including alcohol in a children's show like this was bound to cause some sort of uproar. Not only did the episode feature underage drinking, but it also features Grand Theft Auto, as the characters steal a police car, drive under the influence, and then die after driving directly off of a cliff, only to show their souls float up to heaven. At the end of the episode, they did make it out as if this entire episode was a PSA for underage drinking. The episode is now banned from airing in the US, however, it still airs today in Canada.
3,
Bugs Bunny, too many episodes banned. Oh boy, cartoons during the 1940s through the 1960s certainly were controversial, weren't they? In 2001, Cartoon Network decided to have a 49-hour marathon called June Bugs, dedicated to showing every single Bugs Bunny cartoon ever made. As good of a strategy as that is to bring back old nostalgic cartoons for a marathon, the producers of this marathon didn't take into account the many controversial cartoons that Bugs was actually in. After a dozen of the tunes were deemed controversial, Cartoon Network made plans to air them at 3 a.m., with a disclaimer running across the screen, then ultimately decided to ditch them. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, what exactly was so offensive? Well, take for example the episode titled Any Bonds Today. This episode crosses lines that no production company would ever dare to even go near today. The episode features Bugs Bunny dressed up in blackface and taking part in a minstrel show. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Other examples include Bugs Bunny Nips the Nips and Hair Meets Hair, where Bugs is fighting offensive Japanese and German characters, respectively. Other plot lines insult Native Americans, one even made fun of Australian Aborigines. Before the marathon could finish, Cartoon Network decided to pull the plug on the whole thing.
2,
The X-Files, Home. So The X-Files is a pretty weird show that always showcases the strangest of subject matter. But there was one particular subject they couldn't get away with. This banned episode featured an incestuous, deformed family. The summary of the episode is as follows, quote, "Quadruple amputee mother is caught breeding with her disfigured sons, thereby creating more disfigured children." Yeah, that was the official description of the episode. No joke, Home was viewed by 21% of households tuned to the tube when it aired in 1996. It was also the only episode of The X-Files banned from syndication on Fox. That being said, however, the fans wouldn't let the decision stand. In 1997, Home was voted the #1 episode in a marathon on FX. It's such a good episode, in fact, that even today, the episode is commonly regarded as one of the best of the series.
1,
Dexters Laboratory, Rude Removal. We're really surprised this episode wasn't mentioned much when we were doing the research for this list. So this one didn't come to people's attention until years after the show was taken off the air. Dexter's Laboratory was one of Cartoon Network's premier shows up until its cancellation in 2003. This episode revolved around a machine that splits both Dexter's and Dee Dee's personalities in half, creating one pair of them who are well-mannered and another pair that are rude. The premise of the episode wasn't entirely bad, however. The episode itself included swearing. Obviously, you can't have foul language on kids' cartoon shows, meaning that the episode never found its way to broadcast. It did, however, get released online in 2013.
Don't forget to like us and subscribe for more Elite Facts.